Liberals are seething over Trump deploying the National Guard in Washington, D.C. And one of the liberals that is seething is this person right here, the androgynous Rachel Maddow. They is seething because she doesn't see why Donald Trump should put the National Guard in Washington, D.C. Now, it would seem obvious to a normal person, right? The crime rate is high, people are getting attacked, people feel unsafe. But she thinks this is a tolerable amount of crime. Now, I don't know what that means, tolerable amount of crime, but she's going to explain in this video. We're going to talk about why that's idiotic. Now, this comes after a Doge staffer known as Big Balls, otherwise named Edward Korstein, I think that's how you say his name, was attacked in the streets of Washington, D.C. at 3 a.m. by a group of teenagers. A couple of them were 15. Now, mind you, here's something you have to realize. Washington, D.C., just to show you how bad crime is, already has a curfew. I don't remember what the curfew is. I think it's probably like 10 p.m. or something. I don't know. But it's definitely before 3 a.m. Obviously, at 3 a.m., 15-year-old teenagers should be at home, right? You would think, especially with the citywide curfew. Obviously, it's not working because they're in the street at 3 a.m. attacking people for carjacking or whatever it was in this case. I think they attempted to carjack him, and all they got away with was an iPhone. But either way, I mean, it was a terrible attack. You can see this is one of the people in question, and this is how they left him. A bloody mess. So obviously, I mean, Rachel Maddow, you look at this and tell me that the streets of DC are safe. Like, in what world? I mean, but according to Rachel Maddow, this is perfectly fine, and that's a tolerable amount of crime. So we're going to look at what she says real quick and react and explain why she's an idiot.
In Washington, D.C., homicides are down 32%. Robberies are down 39%, armed carjackings are down 53%, assaults with a dangerous weapon are down 27%.
Now, these stats are misleading. Now, first of all, the thing I'd want to ask is, why are you defending crime? Is there something to gain from this? I don't see how this is beneficial to anyone, including people who have some type of reason to attack Donald Trump I don't see any way in which you could defend crime. It's just stupid. This is beyond idiotic. But she's trying to say, oh, it's actually safer than it was last year. 2024 is safer than it was in 2023. Well, luckily we have crime stats. And so here we have from the Department of Justice, the official crime stats. And she's totally right. We're down 32, 39%. This is the source she's using. 32 here, 39 for robbery. I don't know where the other ones are, but I'm sure they're somewhere in here. But what you'll know by the numbers is in 2024, the homicides were 187. 187 homicides in 1 year. Now, I don't know about you, but that's 187 too many homicides, in my opinion. I don't know. Me personally, I don't like homicide. I don't know about you guys. I don't know about Rachel Maddow. It sounds like she likes homicide. So this is like, basically what she's saying is, oh, the DC is so safe. We only had 187 homicides this year. It's perfectly fine. Now, mind you, this is way above the national average, right? DC is still one of the most dangerous places in the United States. So obviously, this is an unacceptable level of crime, especially for the capital of a country like the United States. It should be one of the safest places. You have all your federal workers there. You have all your senators, your congressmen, the freaking president showing up there. Why is it not the safest place in the country? But obviously, it's not. It's one of the most dangerous. And Rachel Maddow's defending that. She's like, oh, look, there was only 100-something homicides this year. Like I said, 100-something too many. And the same is true with all these stats. You don't even have to look into all of them. Just because the crime is down from an absurd peak to a slightly lower amount doesn't mean it's safe. It just means it's a little less dangerous. Doesn't change the fact you have to do something about it. If 187 homicides pop up in any city, that's going to be an insane peak. You got to do something about it.
In Washington, D.C., the rates of burglaries and assaults with a dangerous weapon are at their lowest point in 30 years.
So again, this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how low it is compared to any point in history. You don't have to compare it. You just have to look at how it is now and say, is this a tolerable amount of crime? Which is something she's going to mention. And the answer is always, no, this isn't tolerable. Any amount of crime is an issue. Any amount of homicides over 0 is above the tolerable amount of crime. Because no crime should be tolerable. We should be aiming for 0 crime. I don't know where this insane idea comes from. She's going to mention it right now, I think.
Nevertheless, Because he's so tough on crime, President Trump today deployed hundreds of National Guardsmen and women into Washington, D.C. Send the U.S. military to become the police force in Washington, D.C.
If the police force ain't doing their job, what else are you supposed to do? Send in the military.
The lead in the
How else are you
Washington
supposed to fix
Post
it?
tonight, quote, President Donald Trump announced today that he is placing the D.C. police under direct federal control and will deploy the National Guard to the streets of Washington, an extraordinary flex of federal power that stripped city leadership of its ability to make law enforcement decisions and could expose residents of the nation's capital to unpredictable encounters with a domestically deployed military force. A domestically deployed military force. Because tough on crime. You think it's really about crime?
What else would it be about, you freaking idiot? What else is it gonna be about?
You think it's really about being tough on crime? Do you want to maybe track down the axe and machete triple murderer Trump?
What she's about to do is called whataboutism. I believe you can call this tu quoque, I'm not sure, but this is a fallacy. She's not attacking the argument. The argument from Trump would be, or from someone who is against crime in DC would be, the crime rate in DC is higher than it should be. It's intolerable, the amount of crime. The police force isn't doing its job. Therefore, you need more force in the area to police crime. Therefore, we're going to send in the military because the police force isn't doing its job. Obviously, they need more power or more troops or what have you, more personnel. We need to do something about lowering the crime. That's the argument. And what she's saying is, oh, what about this criminal? What about Ghislaine Maxwell? What about the Epstein files? That has nothing to do with whether or not you should put troops on the ground in D.C. That's whataboutism. So she's not attacking the argument here.
Just released to the streets of Orlando to go ask him if he thinks it's about being tough on crime? Or you maybe want to pop in to ask Ghislaine
Maxwell.
at that
Not
Bureau
relevant.
of Prisons
Whataboutism.
Crown Jewel facility that kind of looks like a community college?
Also, why can't you believe in both? Why can't you say both Trump shouldn't pardon Ghislaine Maxwell and also it's fine for him to put the National Guard in D.C.? They can both be true.
Want to go ask her? Think it's because he's so tough on crime? That said, I mean, let's be generous here. Maybe it's not really just a generic tough on crime thing. Maybe it's specifically because it's D.C., which is the seat of the U.S. federal government. So even for a city enjoying a 30-year low in violent crime, maybe that's still just an intolerable amount of crime.
It's still an intolerable amount of crime, she says mockingly. I want to ask Rachel Maddow, how much is a tolerable amount of crime? How many homicides would it take for you to say, oh no, actually this is intolerable? Like, we have to do something about this. It's at 187 for 2024. Is it? I don't know. It's obviously not 187. So what is it? 200, 300, 400? Like how many does it have to be until you're like, oh, maybe this is a problem actually?
Specifically because it's D.C., and D.C. is where the federal government is, and maybe he's just really sensitive about protecting the federal government. Maybe he's really sensitive and really focused when it comes to protecting the seat of the federal government from any kind of crime.
Well, I don't see why that wouldn't be the case. I mean, obviously you should do that.
January 6th? No, forget about that. He's just sensitive about it now. Maybe.
I've seen reports that Trump asked for the National Guard to be there on January 6th. On January 3rd, I believe. I didn't prepare for this, so I don't have the reports exactly. But I do know Nancy Pelosi was also somehow involved with the calling of the National Guard and her. I don't know that she denied it per se. I don't know enough about this necessarily. But I do know that Trump asked for the National Guard on January 3rd to be there on January 6th.
Maybe that's it. Well, let's see. Today's Monday. On Friday, this happened. A sustained violent attack on the headquarters of the federal government Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. See all those little pock marks?
Okay, again, this is whataboutism. This is just
Those little holes, those are bullet holes in the CDC. The gunman reportedly tried to get into the CDC headquarters in Atlanta. Security guards turned.
She's talking about something that happened in Georgia. Like, how's this even relevant?
He then drove to a nearby business, a nearby pharmacy, and took up a shooting position there. The Associated Press reports today that the man fired more than 180 shots into the headquarters of the Centers for Disease Control. More than 180 shots fired. He was found with 5 guns, including 4 long guns, and bullets that he fired.
By the way, I guess it's technically not tu quoque. I guess whataboutism would be something different, but either way, she's not attacking the argument.
At the CDC, broke at least 150 windows. The bullets pierced blast-resistant windows in multiple buildings and spat glass shards into multiple offices.
I'm trying to skip past this. Like, this
He
isn't relevant.
shot himself or was shot by law
I
enforcement.
already heard this. Oh my gosh.
So is this up to date?
Mostly.
Am I allowed?
head of the
I need
agency
YouTube
that
Red.
includes the CDC, Donald Trump's health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy, posted this online after the shooting. Then he posted this one as well. This is what he was posting the day after the shooting at the CDC, when a gunman fired more than 180 bullets into the headquarters of the Centers for Disease
Oh, he posted something on Instagram. Oh my gosh. On X.com. Oh my gosh.
Control.
Why
This
would he
was
do
the
that?
reaction of the man in charge of that agency. Later, to expressing condolences, attack on this incident, Donald, or the CDC. Maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's not about crime. Maybe it's not about any other thing he might voice. Maybe it's what you can see with your own two eyes.
Oh, you mean like that guy Big Balls getting attacked, mauled in the middle of the street at 3 a.m. when it's supposed to be the safest, for against teenagers. Supposedly teenagers aren't supposed to be on the street. You're like, oh, I'm not going to get attacked by a group of teenagers at 3 a.m. They're supposed to be at home. There's a curfew. Is that what you're talking about? Things you can see with your own eyes? Yeah, we saw that.
Maybe it's that he really enjoys using U.S. military force against American civilians on American soil and wants any excuse to do it anywhere he can. Watch what they do, not what they say.
It's almost like that's the only way to enforce rule of law in this nation. It's almost like the police force won't do its job because they're incompetent. What about that? It's almost like there's 187 homicides in supposedly what's supposed to be the safest year ever in D.C. It's almost like they can't make it safe.
Because, given what else he's done on the issue of crime, does it make sense that him sending in the troops for a military takeover of Washington, D.C. is about crime? That's what he said. But what do you think based on what he's done? Because meanwhile, while he's talking about crime, he has sent in the National Guard and active duty U.S. Marines to Los Angeles as well, right? Supposedly to save that city from protests against him. That deployment was so inexplicable and so palpably disconnected from its purported justifications that the LA Times reported on a spike in calls to the GI rights hotline with...
Okay, well, look, I don't know how the LA riots went. It sounds like they weren't that bad. Not as bad as the BLM riots. But look, riots are riots. Why wouldn't you send in the troops to police them to make it safe? What, would you rather have a mostly peaceful protest? Is that what we're saying?
military personnel telling that hotline they didn't want to be deployed to point guns at citizens. Military personnel telling that hotline they, quote, didn't want to be on the side of being armed occupiers in their own country. The New York Times...
Okay, well, whatever the military personnel think is not worth opining on. Like, they follow orders,
Times reported the troops recoiling from...
When you sign up for the military, you're a number. You do what the commander-in-chief tells you to do. You don't get an option, you get a say.
Trump's use of them in Los Angeles. In more pungent terms, quote, at least one company commander and one battalion commander who objected to the mission were reassigned to work unrelated to the mobilization. Some troops became so disgruntled that there were several reports of soldiers defecating in Humvees and in...
Okay, this is a bunch of nonsense. I don't know that she says anything worth... Okay, migrants, anything worth covering, really. Military zones on the border, don't see a problem with that. That's not relevant here either. So she's just seething for no reason. Crime is high in D.C. Trump deploys the troops to make it safer. And Rachel Maddow's upset about it somehow. Who knows how? Who knows why or how? Now, one thing... Let's look at this graph real quick. This is the homicides in D.C. I don't know where they pulled these from, but apparently they have the source down here somewhere. opendata.dc.gov. I don't know if this is accurate, but as you can see, there's a lot of homicides. So it doesn't really matter how down they are compared to when, like I said, we don't have to compare time periods. We're looking at today and now. What is the crime like today? And if it's above what's tolerable, which like I said is 0, the amount of tolerable crime is 0. If it's above that, then you have to do something about it. And if the police force isn't doing something about it, then you have to bring in another force from outside the police force to do something about it. And obviously the police force isn't doing that. So mentioning other crimes, Rachel Maddow thinks it's so safe. The total violent crimes are 3,469. Among them, 187 homicides, 143 sexual abuse cases, 1,026 cases of assault with a dangerous weapon, 2,013 cases of robbery, 1,001 cases of burglary. At what point does it have to get to before Rachel Maddow or the liberals complaining about the National Guard? How much does it have to get to before they think, oh, actually, this is too much crime. We shouldn't do something about this. Just insane. I don't know whatever these stats are. You guys can look at them for yourself. This is on the Department of Justice website. One of the other concerns that came up is what they're going to do with homeless people. It seems like they're making a big deal of that. They're removing the homeless people that are in encampments and tents. Now, mind you, obviously, they aren't just forcibly removing these people. They're offering them shelter. They're offering them a place to stay. It's not like they're just taking them at gunpoint and like moving them out of the city. So this is Carolyn Levitt. She's going to explain exactly what they're doing for the homeless people. Now, I do want to mention, it seems like the shelters are kind of at max capacity. So obviously, hopefully, they have enough capacity, and if not, hopefully they open more for the homeless people that want shelter. Because obviously nobody wants people on the street, and nobody wants them to be fined or be in jail for being homeless. But obviously, if they don't accept shelter, well, what else are you going to do with them? You can't just leave them on the street. So this is her, Carolyn Levitt, explaining what's going to happen to the homeless
Related
people.
topic. Regarding the president's efforts in Washington, D.C., do you have any specifics about how homeless people will be dealt with, where they would be moved to? What does this look like?
I do, yes, and it's an important question, so thank you for raising it. The Metropolitan Police Department, with the support of the new federal agencies who have been surging on the streets of the District of Columbia, are going to enforce the laws that are already on the books here in Washington, D.C. For far too long, these laws have been completely ignored, and the homelessness problem has ravaged the city. So D.C. Code 22-1307 and D.C. Municipal Regulation 24-100 give the Metropolitan Police Department the authority to take action when it comes to homeless encampments. So homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time. Again, these are pre-existing laws that are already on the books. They have not been enforced, which is part of the reason for this federalizing of the National Guard to bring in this assistance for law enforcement. While we are targeting criminals and trying to remove criminals off of the streets, we also...
One thing I want to quickly mention about homelessness and the laws not being enforced is what you mentioned. If you don't enforce the laws, obviously the problem accumulates. It becomes worse. So as encampments grow, it attracts more people to the encampments, obviously. If you're the only homeless person in the encampment and you're quickly told as soon as you become homeless, like you have to take shelter or you're going to jail. Either way, you're going to be sheltered and fed. It's just either going to be in the jail or it's going to be in the shelter where you're going to eventually have to get a job and eventually get on your 2 feet and provide for yourself at some point. But of course, it's a lot harder when you let the problem accumulate. So I have to say, dealing with the problem is a quick way to prevent it.
They want to make DC safe and beautiful, and that involves removing mentally disturbed individuals in homeless encampments as well. So we will be using these regulations and code that already exists to clean up our streets, and we've already had great success. Not many of you picked up on this, but the United States Park Police has actually done remarkable work in terms of removing homeless encampments from the city. Since the president signed this executive order in March, 70 homeless encampments have been removed by the U.S. Park Police. There are only 2 homeless encampments remaining in D.C. federal parks under the National Park Service's jurisdiction, and the removal of those 2 remaining camps is scheduled for this week. So the U.S. Park Police will be leading this effort alongside MPD.
Okay, so basically what she's saying is they already cleaned a lot of the encampments. They're going to clean the remaining encampments. Hopefully these homeless people are getting the support they need. Obviously, nobody wants them to be on the street. Nobody wants them to be in jail. But that's the only way they're going to get the psychological help they need. That's the only way they're going to get on their feet if they want to. If not, obviously they can end up in jail. I mean, at least there they'll have shelter, a place to stay. They'll have meals, you know what I mean? They're supported by the taxpayers. Either way, they're going to get that whether they decide to be in jail or in the shelter. But they just can't be on the street, you know? So all this to say, the liberals are seething for no reason. Rachel Maddow doesn't really bring up a good point here. The National Guard being in D.C. is useful for bringing down the crime rates. Obviously, you want your nation's capital to be one of the lowest crime rates. Obviously, you have diplomats, tourists coming in from other parts of the world. Obviously, you have the most important people in your government showing up there. So why would you tolerate any amount of crime, not just there, but in any other city?